I'll be completely honest. We'll save you some time. Go straight to some small business chambers of commerce, and yeah, it took us a couple years to get that wisdom that I now
Mm.
hope to share with other offices as they go into this.
Nothing But a Number promises engaging content tailored just for you. Join us as we dive deep into discussions on topics that matter to our communities.
Hello, I am Alice Bennett, Associate State Director for Advocacy with AARP Georgia, and we thank you for joining us for another episode of Nothing But a Number. Today we have conversation with my colleague from Missouri, Mr. Jay Hardenbrook, and our conversation is going to focus on his path to winning success on Work and Save in the state of Missouri, some of the greatest highlights and tactics of things that he did to get to that win, and any advice and expectations he can share with us from the state of Georgia. So before we start the conversation, I'm going to allow Jay to introduce himself, and then we'll get started. Jay?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here. My name is Jay Hardenbrook. I am the Advocacy Director for AARP in the state of Missouri. Going into my 25th legislative session here, not just with AARP. I've worked for a number of organizations, from child advocacy to budget and tax policy, etc. But really have enjoyed being here with AARP. We get to work on a wide array of issues, as I'm sure you all are finding out through this podcast. But we really get to work for the 50 plus population, and I've really found a lot of personal fulfillment from that. And also, as we all know, the size of the membership and their willingness to activate not just on election day, but throughout a legislative session really makes it possible to have some real victories for the 50 plus population, which I really enjoy doing.
And speaking of victories, I want to take a moment to celebrate you and the state of Missouri because you passed Work and Save last year, correct?
That is correct. We actually wound up calling it the Show Me My Retirement Savings Plan.
Yes.
And we have moved into implementation now. Very excited that the board has been named,
Oh,
and
wow.
they are starting to meet.
So full speed ahead. Y'all are moving full speed ahead. I'll be looking forward to having more conversations with you after we pass the Work and Save in Georgia on what that's looking like. So with that, tell us a little bit about the path you took to get that win for your state and the members of AARP in Missouri.
Well, I do like to warn everyone that advocacy, especially in states like Missouri, and I'm sure similarly in Georgia,
Yes.
is rarely a 1 year process. So in this particular case, it took us 5 years of working on this issue before we were able to get it passed. And I will say, really, we were brought into this conversation by some legislators who very much wanted to do something around retirement savings, especially for small business employees. They wound up not being the sponsors at the end, but they really brought us into the conversation. So we knew right away that we were going to be looking at a plan that would be housed in the state treasurer's office.
Mm-hmm.
So we reached out to the state treasurer right away, and were able to find out that he actually was a small business owner himself who had just gone through the process of getting a 401k plan
Oh, wow.
for his small businesses. And so he knew what a time consuming process it was,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew how expensive it was.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was very willing, I will say, to help set us up with some incredible sponsors
Okay.
for our legislation. Our main sponsor, Representative Michael O'Donnell,
Mm-hmm.
is just one of those workhorse type guys. And he became committed to this issue, and he worked it and worked it and worked it until we were able to get it done. It was a little bit different sort of strategy, and I'm sure we'll get to that than what we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a long slog through 5 years to get to where we were going.
So for someone like me who was just getting started, what I'm hearing is be ready for the long haul. And make sure you have the
Yes,
right
definitely.
champions. So it's not going to be a quick process, is what I hear, and I'm prepared for the fight. So thank you for that. So what are some of the greatest highlights and tactics that you utilized to make sure that you had the win or you got what you needed? And we're talking about champions. What were some of the challenges? Just some of the best things and some of the highlights that you experienced during this process.
Yeah, and the first thing is that it's sort of become our modus operandi here in Missouri AARP is we went to the people that we knew would most likely oppose it. So we immediately went to the State Chamber of Commerce. We already had a pretty good relationship with them due to our Medicaid expansion ballot initiative fight just a few years ago. So we were able to really sit down, talk to them, get their concerns out on the table, and try to find the best way to go. I will say that the business community, while we never had the chambers of commerce or the NFIB testifying in favor of our legislation,
Mm-hmm.
the business community became really great partners for us. Not again, not those associations necessarily, but the small businesses themselves. And if you look at most local chambers of commerce, not most, look at all local chambers of commerce, they are the vast majority of their members are those small businesses, which is really who were targeting, not as a mandate for them, but a voluntary benefit that they could offer to themselves
Mm-hmm.
and to their employees in this 401k style retirement savings.
Mm-hmm.
They really activated around that, and they got really excited about the idea of really being able to compete on a level playing field with the larger businesses that could offer these sorts of benefits as well. So I do think the business community, and we sort of stumbled onto them. I'll be completely honest. We'll save you some time. Go straight to some small business chambers of commerce, and yeah, it took us a couple years to get that wisdom that I now
Mm.
hope to share with other offices as they go into this.
Since that's where you are, share some of that wisdom now, because this is again we're in this process and we're going to be pushing for work and save. So what is some of the wisdom that, because now in hindsight you know that that was something that you should have done from the beginning. So what is some of that wisdom now? Just a couple of
Yeah,
points.
so yeah, I will say that small chambers of commerce, especially in more rural or ex-urban areas, are looking for content for their members. So we took full advantage of that. We went to a number of small chambers of commerce throughout the state where we knew that, there might not be as large of a financial services industry footprint.
Hmm.
And we just started talking to the people there. We started talking to the businesses, and really got the sense of how difficult it is right now for a lot of small businesses.
Hmm.
And that is not a Missouri specific thing. They are struggling to find people to work
Oh.
for them right now, even regardless of how much they might pay. And one of the things that they saw as being very vital to that, well, they talked about the Chambers program to allow them to buy into health insurance, which is a big deal. And they were really able to see this retirement savings work and save model that we used, which we went with the 401k model instead of
Hmm.
the IRA, which I guess it's sort of its first of its kind,
It
but
is.
really focused in on what those businesses said they would want.
Hmm.
And we didn't come in with our own bill. We let the conversations with those folks that we knew could potentially be stumbling blocks along the way
Mm.
craft the legislation for us. So even after those conversations, we thought of a small business as 100 employees or less.
Ah, okay.
And that's what we have written into all of our literature. The Bankers Association,
Hmm.
again, trying to
Hmm.
keep the lines of communications open, preferred that it be 50 or under. So we did go ahead and make that change in the legislation. I will say, however, they came back and asked to go down to 25
Oh, wow.
later, and our sponsor, again, good reason to have great champions. He said, if you're going to push for 25, we're going back to 100.
Oh, wow.
So that sort of let them kind of fall away from their opposition once again.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's I will also say I'm the type of person who likes to get a lot of people activated.
Hmm.
I love, getting emails and phone calls into lawmakers. This is one of those where it just doesn't really lend itself to a whole lot of activation.
That is true.
It is a very granular kind of issue. Is it means a lot to a
Hmm.
lot of small business owners,
Hmm.
but it doesn't mean, or it's not something on the top of minds for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
So learning how to pitch it as that, this is something really valuable for the economy
Hmm.
and not just something that is really valuable for these workers. And it is. Let me be 100% clear. It is incredibly valuable. As one of my friends just said to me in the Capitol, here's my lesson for retirement savings. You'll
Hmm.
never have enough.
Oh, yeah.
And this really will allow people, whether, here in Missouri, there in Georgia, as you lay these out, it will allow people to have a much higher quality of life into retirement. But they're not thinking about that right now. We're the only ones thinking about
We're
that
the
right
only
now.
ones thinking about that. That's for sure.
So focusing on that business case, I think for us wound up being probably the biggest eye opener. And again, it took us a few years to get our eyes opened to that.
And as I'm doing this work, it's taken me a couple of years too. So I totally get it. Totally understand. Totally understand. So my final question for you is there any insight or anything that we should expect here in the state of Georgia, being that we too are a red state, like Missouri is a red state? Any words of advice or any expectations that we should be on the lookout for, other than what you've already mentioned?
Yeah, no, there's other things, and it winds up being more form than function. I think a lot, the just traditional "this isn't the role of government"
Yeah.
thing that often comes up, and that's why we wound up going to more of a multiple employer plan. So it again seems more like people are. It seems more private. We also had to make some changes to how they did the bidding for the financial services firm that would actually run the program. So it's, I think that it's like any complicated issue. You have to be ready to listen to people and be willing to make adjustments as you go along. And they will be, some of them, I know
Some of
we
them.
were sitting there saying, this doesn't even make any sense.
Some of them.
But we did it. But yeah, so a lot of them, it just keeping the door open to really strange ideas and being willing to say, well, does this make it worse? Does it, does it potentially make it better? So I think being open to that feedback when it comes from unlikely sources is, the biggest advice I could possibly give.
So that was our final question. Thank you so much for joining us for Nothing But a Number. Thank you, Jay, for being with us. To stay connected to the work of AARP, please follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and follow us on our Facebook at aarp.org/GA. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Nothing But a Number. Thank you so much for joining us and diving into the conversations that shape our communities. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and inspiring. Remember, new episodes drop every Wednesday at 12 noon on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. To stay up to date with all our latest episodes and to continue exploring the topics that matter most to you, be sure to subscribe and follow Nothing But a Number on your preferred podcast platform. Your engagement and support means the world to us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with friends and family who might also find value in our content. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected, and we'll meet you right here next Wednesday. Take care.